We're live.
We're live. Welcome back to the Weekly Roundup. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. First off, we need to talk about pricing. I'm actually slowly mapping out a pricing course just because
We're
we've had a
live.
lot of requests.
Uh,
Oh, we got a little.
Whoa, we were in.
Whoa.
Whoa,
We're in
whoa,
we're
whoa.
in double mode. We're in
Round.
double mode. Round pound. Yeah. I'm actually formulating a pricing course just because pricing is one of the things that we coach to right away. We always check pricing. And it here's the thing, people don't buy your price, but at the same time, it is foundationally the thing that you're selling through. Like it's the way that they access the value that you're offering. So it endlessly comes up in conversation. Like I can't think of 1 month since I started coaching, even when I owned my studio and I was just going to other studios locally and doing sales trainings because they asked me to do it, that we didn't talk about pricing. It's just always a conversation. So I'm saying this to preface this entire conversation with just keep in mind that in the end, the pricing itself is a support mechanism for your sales and a communication mechanism to funnel your people towards the type of behavior that you know would help them succeed at their yoga practice. Fundamentally, that's it. Beyond that, it matters a lot less than the industry thinks. Like it's like such a ongoing conversation all the time. And I think that you can get stuck in the like, what should I do with my pricing? Like thinking that that's solving other things. Oh, maybe I'll try changing my intro to this or I'll do that. So just be aware that like at some point you got to just go with something for a bit, see what shakes out. That's the real way to optimize it. But the conversation has been coming up a lot about single classes. And my experience still to this day, which is, I have to say, like, I don't know, I'm getting old and salty in this industry or something. I don't know. But I'm still like fucking floored that this is a conversation sometimes. Because even just this past week, I talked with the studio and their drop in was $16.
Oh my God. You're kidding
Right.
me.
And so, and their exact words were, "This is no shade. It's just like this is a common." They're one of 1,000 times I've heard this. They're like, "Well, we want to make our classes more accessible. Yoga's gotten so expensive, so accessibility. So our drop in, we don't want it to be higher than 16." And to me, it's just like an accidental. It's a misunderstanding of what makes yoga accessible, in my opinion. But then also it's like this accidental move that has good intentions, but ends up quite literally shooting you in the foot, so to speak. Like it just will hinder your business so much on so many levels. And the other behavioral thing that we're seeing in the industry right now that I think was part of how we started this conversation off. Actually, it was Carol. Carol was kind of asking about, how high to go on a drop in, which we'll talk about in a second. But the other behavioral thing we're seeing is sales reluctance. Now, that's not new, but I can say with a fair level of confidence that in 2018, 2019, as long as your pricing strategy made sense and someone at your studio had some effort going into asking people if they wanted to do an intro, it was pretty easy to sell an intro. Like there wasn't a lot of upfront resistance. Whereas now it does seem that people are making a much stronger decision right away. Like day one, even before they've come in, they've already made a very strong decision about, am I doing a single class versus signing up for something more, etc. And it's not that you can't help them find an alternative path, but rather that creates an interesting dynamic, such as then you have a prime time class that you can't get an intro person into. Or if you're selling a bunch of drop-ins, the dynamic between your drop-in and your intro and how they fit together, like you need to really make that leverage point leaning towards the intro much stronger than before, etc. So there's a few things there. There's a kickoff. Carol, maybe give us a breakdown on what your original question was about, how high to price it.
Well, I have a client who's in a metropolitan area,
And we're noticing that, we always coach to have around 2 times the price of a drop-in is the ideal. Oh, hey, Maria's here. Hey, Maria. Is the ideal starting point for your intro. And hers at that point, when we were talking about it, was the intro is a little bit higher than 2 times the price of a drop-in. They're having a bit of a difficult time converting people onto their intro. She's, has her team doing sales training. And so we talked about, is it time to really go hard and increase that drop-in price to make the intro look even that much better to somebody, as like an option. Like, why wouldn't you go for that intro? But that would push it into like the nearly $40 range because of the area she's in. So yeah, I'll take Terry. Terry has opinions. But yeah, so we just started the discussion about like how high can you go? And
I actually, the reason I say is I have a client now. Granted, they're in the North Bay of California, and for the across the Golden Gate Bridge in Marin County, which is arguably one of the most expensive counties in the state of California. They're at $45 for a drop-in. And when I look at their KPIs, you'd be amazed at how much money they've made in drop-ins this year. It's significant. And now, granted, they have 2 studios. One studio is about 30 people. The other, I think, is like 48 or 50. So they have fairly, in the OG Beacon, they have fairly substantial studios. But even then, it's like, because they've built their membership and everything, they're at that 70% of the time now. And we're looking at, okay, limiting, okay, we'll keep the drop-in where it is, but you want to take that Saturday morning, you want to take that rock star teacher who happens to be older than I am. So, and I think Ed's in his 70s, and he's just one of those teachers. Anyway, you want to get in his class? There's no drop-ins. It's like members only kind of thing. So then with this whole conversation this week morphed into, well, how can we get creative with some of this stuff? And, this is where like a dynamic pricing comes in, something like that, Josh. Limiting.
Oh, sorry, Terry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Don't go ahead.
Yeah. What's Miami's price right now? What are you seeing?
Yeah, 35, 37. I haven't seen anything as 40.
Yeah, we're not 40s pushing the limit of what we're seeing. I'm not saying anything's right or wrong.
Southern California
Maria,
has 40, and then Northern California 45.
Wow, yeah. Maria, what's Vancouver at now?
30.
Yeah, and that's kind of the top in Vancouver. Now, also that's Canada. This is the reason I point this out is
Big
there is
difference.
a little market. There's a little market sensitivity. Canada, if you did a $40 drop in, I actually think it would prohibit people from coming to your studio.
Definitely.
On principle.
On principle, yeah. So I wonder, I guess the thought would be, principally from a structural standpoint, you want to push the price of your drop-in as high as you can, because it also sets the ceiling of what the value of a single class is in your studio. So all of your other pricing has to functionally fit underneath that. So the higher it is, the higher all your prices can be, and the bigger gap between your price options is available. Then you don't have the difference of like one price option is only $1 less per class than the next, and therefore they're competing with each other. You can make it like a $4 or $5 difference. That's good for you, because it makes them much more definitive about who would choose one option or another. That being said, I think one of the things that came up when Carol first brought this question up was like, there's kind of just a gut reaction sense to this too. That's not yours, the owner, but rather like, what is the sensitivity in the market? So to me, and this goes for intros as well, a little bit in my mind, for some people, it's like, if an intro is $70, it doesn't matter if that's a good deal. Like, we all know that it's a good deal, but we have the context to think, well, if I came just 3 times, it's going to be more than worth it. Plus, I'll probably come 10. Plus, there's the studio, plus the different teachers, plus the heat, plus the whatever in a studio. So that's a good deal. But if I'm brand new, even if I practiced a little bit of yoga before, maybe the only yoga I've ever practiced is like yoga in the park or at the Y or something like that, where it's just been cheap. It's been $10 or something. Then contextually, that amount of money for me to pay that for yoga feels high at that moment. So I guess that would be the question I would bring up is like, how do you draw that line of just the gut reaction where it's like $40, ugh, like, in your market where you do start to you start to like create a bad taste in someone's mouth, maybe.
Well, yes. And my new favorite Josh term, asterisks. Yes, and asterisks is Nina had posted some. We had talked about this earlier in the week in our coaches chat, and about, okay, if you have a high drop-in and maybe you have another service, like I have a studio that has the saunas. So maybe you do like a day pass. And Josh, you were talking about that too. So it's like, okay, for $50, you get a yoga class, and then you get a hot steam, or you get a dry sauna or something like that. So you're combining, it's good for a day. Yeah, Josh, you were talking about the Korean spa you went to in LA, and I wonder if is it the one that was by La Cienega, that Korean spa? Because we used to go there when I went to teacher training, because for $25 you could go the steam room and the pools and all that stuff. You could spend the whole day there.
Day
pass.
Yeah, for a day pass. Awesome. So that's an interesting thought, because like the studio I have, they do have sauna. Well, what if we make the drop in $50? Then they also get a sauna as well, because the sauna, it's there and they can have up to 4 people in it. So it's, so they're toying with that. Because I'm trying to get them away and convince the other owners that their number one selling product, and it's the cheapest, is their 50 class card.
Right.
How much is it?
Yeah.
It works out. It's $700. It's $14 class.
Wow.
It's less than it's less than as we like to say, optimizing for practicing 2 times a week on the membership. It's like, well, no wonder you don't have very many members.
No wonder they're buying that.
No wonder they're buying that.
Which is, if that's what you want, then that's great. But that's a perfect example of like, you're telling people to buy that with it priced that way, which if that's what you want, then fine. But there's a lot of reasons why we would coach towards probably that isn't what you want. Like what we see, just so that it's been said, is recurring income as the primary focus is your number one thing. You need cash flow first. Then if you're going to sell something to increase lifetime value, a card like that is theoretically an option. The problem with those cards always becomes expiration, total usage, because like it's so concrete that then someone thinks like, oh, I've got 70 classes or whatever. If I don't use them, I'm going to ask you to use them, or I'm going to ask you to give them to someone else. Because in my mind, I didn't buy access. I bought 70 classes.
You bought 50, whatever the class card
or 50 classes or whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone's done it. We used to have an 80 class card. We're like, it's 80 classes and you can share it with 3 people or some dumb shit like that. And then like someone came in and was still taking classes on it 4.5 years after we opened. And I was like, fuck this. We had already taken it down, but it was fine. And that's no shit on them. It was our fault. But I'm like, I will never sell more than 20 classes ever again. And now it's probably 10. Yeah. Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, I just have a question. And this came up in one of my coaching calls recently. And I've heard the coaches mention it, but I couldn't remember. But what percentage of a studio's revenue should come from classes, but specifically, I guess, auto-renewing memberships?
Yeah, MRR.
Yeah.
70.
I thought so. Okay.
Yeah.
Unless, again, asterisks, unless the studio also does a lot of retreats, high ticket items like a retreat a couple of times a year, and or teacher trainings a couple of times a year. Because then the studios that are doing that, because those are much higher ticket items than classes, then what I see, it's usually more like anywhere from the 50 to 60% range.
Yeah.
Because those high ticket items, you sell a retreat that's $3,500, dollars, and you're selling that a couple times a year, you might have $70,000, $80,000 in revenue from, and the same corresponding from a YTT. And I also have studios that have 95% of their revenue comes from memberships. In my studio, I was 90+% was revenue from memberships.
The 70% comes from 70% of total like packages that you sell, not necessarily total revenue of the studio, but it's kind of a better total revenue of studio number nowadays, just because we do see studios tend to skew higher into membership if you just look at packages. Yeah.
So how many like big ticket, or what's the frequency of the big ticket items? Like what should that be at in order to lower that percentage?
That's more, I would look at that more from a lifetime value and a total revenue question. Like if you're going to sell, to say something should or shouldn't be, and that there's nothing wrong with having, 80, 90% MRR in the business. The only hiccup with that is the velocity of money. So if you're trying to make more money within this quarter, you have to sell a bunch of memberships at $150 a month to get that up, which is great because it compounds and makes your next quarter bigger too. But if you're really trying to like get some major cash happening right now, then it's easier to sell a higher price thing. So, and then increasing LTV, it's like often the bigger ticket things, you're not selling to someone cold, you're selling to someone who's already in the business. So that's an LTV play. And then total revenue, it's like there is a realistic, this actually does tie to the drop-in stuff. There is a realistic capacity in a studio. Like there is at some point, it doesn't make sense to add more classes. Your classes are full to a certain amount. Your average retail purchase rate, people being on your MRR, whatever else, like that's all there. But at the same time, you don't have over demand. Like it's not that you have so much excess demand that then you can bring your price up a whole bunch. So you're kind of at a sweet spot. And that's usually a place where you just want to be comfortable there. But that's where margin really matters. Where it's like that might be the case, but do you have the margins that you need for the business to be healthy and for you to be happy? That's where selling a big ticket item or some sort of one-off sale situation can be really profitable, because if you run a retreat properly, you probably have 30%, 40% margin. Most don't, by the way. They have like 10, or we see people just lose their shirt on retreats.
Or it pays for their vacation. A lot of people.
Or it pays for their vacation. Yeah.
Yeah. That's.
But if you really do.
Not a vacation.
Yeah. It's not a vacation.
Exactly. But that's the kind of item that you could have a 30% margin, 40% margin on, and it's a higher ticket thing. So that boosts total revenue and profit quite a bit. This ties into the drop-in conversation though too, because there are other businesses. Like if you look at F45 right now, their sales funnel is really fascinating. It's basically like, we don't give a shit. Come in and work out. It's $38. And it's like, plus you got it, plus a water, plus renting a thing, plus a whatever. Like you're not walking out of there less than $50 most likely. And they're calculating on, and honestly, I'd like to talk to whoever has come up with this concept, because it is something that we look at. But a couple of businesses, F45, a little bit more Orange Theory now than in the past, they're looking at dollars per person on the floor. Like that is their primary metric that they're clearly optimizing for. They're not looking at, does Carol spend $150 here this month? They're looking at, when Carol's there, is she at $20 or $50? And I want as many of the $50, like right now today. And I haven't seen that mentality work in the yoga world at all. Let me just be really clear. But I find it fascinating in general. There's a little twinge inside of me that gets a little pissy about it, because I kind of feel like there's an ethical question there too. But in any case, this margin conversation, this capacity conversation, what do you charge for your drop-in? These are functions of each other. At some point, your drop-in has to go up, because it's theoretically costing you money to have someone in the class on a drop-in. ClassPass would be another example of this, right? Where it's like, you're losing money by them taking up the slot if your class is full, and you're only going to get paid out $16 on that person. And it's diminishing your ability to sell someone else who might be there membership.
I circle back to something you said about retreats and stuff. And one thing to be cautious of, because I've been working with a client now for a while on this, is they got too into workshops, YTT, and retreats because there are higher ticket items, and they wanted the cash from that, and they were neglecting their core product, which is yoga classes. So then their MRR went way off. And then when things kind of started to slow down, all of a sudden now they're like, holy smokes, we're not selling these items anymore, because as you pointed out, Nina, it's a lot of work to run that many, retreats and YTTs and all that kind of stuff. And now, so then we just like, okay, we're just going to like not worry about that. We're going to take that revenue hit. And at the same time, we're going to work on building up membership and building up our classes. And it took about a year plus, but now they've gone through kind of where they've been every month. We could see their yoga classes were going up. Yes, their overall revenue from the prior year was down, but they were building up their yoga classes. And now to the point where they're revenue positive. And it's mostly in yoga. And now when they do like a YTT or a retreat, which is a little more mindful about when they're doing them, then it really is enhancing the overall revenue. So it's like, if you just want to do, I think you've said this before, if you just want to do retreats and YTTs, then just do retreats and YTTs. Don't have a yoga studio.
Don't have a brick and mortar.
Don't have a brick and mortar. If that's your jam.
I think, yeah, one of the, Nina, you and I talked about this in the past too. I know, like, there's a weird narrative in the yoga world, and I still see it to this day all the time. I was in a yoga teacher Facebook group not that long ago, and someone was commenting on this. Like, we just make these blanket statements. They're like, well, in a yoga studio, if you want to make money, you got to run a teacher training, which is horseshit. It's just not true. Doesn't mean you shouldn't run a teacher training, that couldn't make you money. But like, if that's your business plan, what you're basically saying is, I'm going to build out a space and I'm going to offer a product that's going to lose money. And then I'm going to band-aid it by, it's just a lead gen source. That's the whole purpose of my studio, is lead gen to sell this other thing. I guess that's a business model. It sounds like shit to me. Like, I don't know. I find that really strange that's like that. So I don't know. That's the thing that we yelling from the rooftops about. No, like anything you sell in your business should be profitable, should function, should pay for itself if you're doing it right. And all of those things accumulate to being, a really big, very profitable business. I want to take us back to some of the options they were talking about for single class. So, okay, if you get to the limit of what you feel like you can charge for a single class, and it's like, well, I can't go $50 because, this is the other comment I wanted to make. And Carol, you travel around quite a bit and take classes everywhere and stuff too. I don't know how you feel about this, but I do find it frustrating when I go somewhere and I'm like, I don't want to spend $40 and a $5 rental for a mat and a $5 rental for a towel. And then I never have a water bottle because I'm lazy. And then I'm usually buying like an $8 Voss water or something, like, or Nina had the story of going into the city, right? And it's like, after you get the transit and the Uber ride and the whatever, that it's like, I just took a fucking $100 yoga class. Then, you gut check yourself. You're like, I could probably do this in my hotel room, So there is a limit somewhere where it starts to feel a little bit wonky. And
I don't know.
It's
Mia, share your experience. You had that happen right recently in New York.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't care. Because I knew I wasn't going to do it in my hotel.
right. Right. Yeah. I'm talking from the perspective of I still do it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not going to be a regular occurrence though. I wouldn't,
So
in my own town, I'm not going to take a $40 drop in. But
right. And I guess that's the point right there is like, who's the drop in actually for?
yeah. Right. Exactly.
When I had the experience in Southern California, I was just visiting earlier this year, and I actually know the studio owner, and I just paid they don't have drop-ins at all. It's a week pass. And so even though I was only going to take probably one class, I did feel like, well, I could come back. You know, the value of having
Mhm.
the potential, like I was there for a weekend. So when I come back, maybe not, but it kind of softened the blow maybe a little bit to know that I could come back for another class. So I think that's another option we talked about is like once you hit that ceiling of, well, this drop-in can't go any higher, then maybe it becomes, you know, a week pass or something, the day pass option, you know, you could tweak it a little bit, make it a
Or
little
what you said, Carol, don't offer a drop-in.
right.
Yeah, switch it to something else altogether. I think
Right.
that's moving to a weekly membership or running a day pass. The day pass thing is not common, but I think that it's a fascinating, like it hasn't been tested enough for us to say like, here's the data that we have on it. But imagine if it was 24 hours. Like it depends on the system and how you
Yeah.
could enforce on that. If you had a full, it's like, yeah, it's
24
50
hours.
bucks, but it's 24 hours. Take as many classes as you want, use the sauna. So many studios are adding cold plunge and stuff now
Yeah.
too. You know, like what we've seen is cold plunge, I think will be slightly different, but what we've seen in a lot of studios is they add in a secondary product line that's adjacent, but not directly there. So sauna being a good example, thinking that people are going to buy the sauna pass and they don't. It's like more often than not that really struggles. Cold plunge is a little bit more uptrend. I think will be a little bit stronger. Float was the other one that people were doing. But if you can start to incorporate that into like, we're this whole thing instead of, yeah, we've got a cold plunge and it's its own thing. And the business over here of yoga, it's its own thing. And our light therapy egg is this over to here, this other thing, like put them into one, then that's the day pass. It sort of reframes the value to Carol's point. Even if they come in and use, like I probably wouldn't go in being like, I hope I get to do a sauna and cold plunge. But okay, I'll pay $50 and then I would I would go jump in the sauna for a few minutes out of principle to use your money sort of thing.
Well, you just said something that just triggered, it's triggered in a good way. Is you said a day pass in 24 hours. It's like, let's say it's $50 or $60, but you want to take 2 yoga classes. You can take 2 yoga classes. You could take one that
Right.
and then it becomes, well, you can take 2 class. We have or even like a 2-class card. You can call it whatever. You can say this is good for 24 hours. So you can take 2 classes within 24 hours, or for $60, or you can get our intro month member, you know, for $60 for a whole month.
Yeah.
Then it's almost like becomes a totally different conversation way. I don't know, that's really intriguing to me. I like that
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, if you really wanted to still have the single class option. So I wanted to bring back up what you guys think about, like maybe kick us off, Nina. What about the idea of this members only stuff? So this is actually already practiced. What we're talking about is ClassPass is a good example, right? Where rather than just opening up the algorithm and letting ClassPass do whatever you want, at some point in your studio, you put strategic limits per class on ClassPass. You put strategic limits on like which class. Like if your busiest class at 5:30 p.m. is always completely sold out or whatever, you're not putting ClassPass people in there. So you start to sort of like take that back and filter them towards other things. What do we feel about, you could also do that with your drop-ins. Maybe you still do have a regular $30 drop-in, whatever, but like you can't drop into the best classes.
Mhm.
Or there's like there's only two drop-ins available in a class. And when they're sold out, too bad.
Or you might not, those slots might not get released until 2 hours before when we see, you know, what's the registry.
Right.
I think that's a great idea. I love it. I do. Yeah, and as a consumer, don't tell anyone, but I did join ClassPass. I never thought I would as a former studio owner, but I did. And there are many, you know, hot studios around here, hot meaning trendy. And it's exactly that. It's like, I gotta wait to find out if I get into this class or not. And then I'll get the alert on the app and I'm like, boom, I'm in, yes. But some of those classes, I'm like, shoot, that's what works with my schedule. I really want to take it. Like, maybe I will just buy something, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that works, and it kind of adds that kind of call to action, or that like urgency factor of like, if I like this place and I'm buying drop-ins regularly, why wouldn't I just become a member?
Well, that's why I like dynamic pricing. You know, when MindBody rolled out dynamic pricing, I didn't use ClassPass, but that's basically what ClassPass is. It's dynamic pricing. And there were certain classes, it was, I even, to your point, Josh, I played with this for a while, is like my most busy class. I made it like $35.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
made
it could go
it
up.
higher.
It could go up in price.
Yeah, my drop-in was $30. And so I made that class $35, and I actually sold one or two. But then it got to the point where it's just like I cut it off. It's like, if you're not a member, you're not getting into this class, kind of thing. But that is, you know, to your point, Josh, it's like, okay, you want to take this class, come in and take the 6:30 a.m. class, take the off-peak classes. That's the only class you're getting any. You want to get into these prime classes, you have to have a membership. And a membership could be an unlimited, or it could be like a auto renew 4 or 5 pack, something like that, right? But it's for this particular, and depending on your software, you can set that up. Different, you know,
Or
different
booking, or I was just thinking as you're saying that too, Terry, like booking windows are a pretty
booking
heavy
windows.
control mechanism that is not utilized enough. Like the booking window could be, okay, to Nina's point, you can book with a drop-in for any class unlimited, but you can't do it until 48 hours before. Yeah. Whereas if you have a membership, you can do it a month before.
MindBody's actually rolling that out. They're rolling out where you can have different booking windows for, you know, based upon membership. So that's something that's going to be available, I think, that sometime.
Yeah, there's a few platforms that do it. It's good that they're putting that in there. Going back to dynamic pricing, I remember when it came out too. So dynamic pricing was called Limber before.
Yeah, before.
And it was the competitor to ClassPass. That's why it got built. It was built by Doug Heck, who owns Walla. He's one of the founders of Walla. So then he exited that by selling it to MindBody. And a lot of its features, like Limber's growth trajectory, was 10 times faster than ClassPass's was. And which is why MindBody bought it. I always think like it would have been interesting to see if it didn't get purchased, because I think it would have taken over ClassPass because its features were better. Like they were much more like balanced in terms of small business control versus consumer usability, etc. But whatever. When dynamic pricing first came out, I remember doing some videos about it. But then we were traveling in the Earth Roamer, and yeah, like that's the first place I went to go to book a class. Go to the MindBody app, find who had dynamic pricing turned on. And then it was just, this is leading to another point though, too. My decision-making very often, if it wasn't a studio I already knew or wasn't working at or wasn't whatever of where I was going to go, was who was the cheapest and who was the closest. That was the combination. That's it. Because I'm like, I like all yoga classes. So it was a good example of how in a lot of markets, people were competing on convenience instead of selling value and why they're different, and why I know you're going to come to this class or that because it's a different thing. Because the asterisk on that is if it was a studio I knew, or was a teacher that I wanted to take a class from, or it was a style that I wanted to take, then that was irrelevant. It didn't matter if there's a studio right beside me that was $12 for the class and dynamic pricing. I'll pay the $30 and go to the place that I want to go to. Interesting. Only accessing certain classes, more restrictions on it, day passes, more limited drop-in availability. And then the last one actually that we didn't mention that there's a few studios already employing is sell drop-ins, but sell them in person only.
Yeah, I did. I went to doing that.
Or like you have to call or text or
show up if there's
Yeah. It just says on the site, drop-in is X, like
available
in studio only. Or what I would do now if I was going to modernize that, for sure, I would do text this number.
Yeah.
It's like force the sales conversation to happen. You want to come and do a drop-in, fine. But like, why are you doing a drop-in?
Hmm.
So if it's us and we're traveling, I'm like, hey, dude, I'm traveling. I don't live here. I'm going to take one class. I'm leaving tomorrow. I just want to come and take a class. Sure, sell me a drop-in, you know? But maybe also I'm traveling and I'm here for a week. Sell me your traveler's pass. Or I'm not traveling, in which case you're like, dude, why are you doing a drop-in? Buy an intro. Like it could really be that easy. But if that conversation doesn't happen, because Terry does it in the KPIs all the time, the ability to upgrade people from a drop-in to an intro is high.
At the front desk.
At the front desk. But it is hard for studios because you really have to be on the ball and the team has to really actively engage that person. It's much harder than no one really walks in with nothing anymore, but it's much harder than someone walking in with nothing.
Nothing meaning a purchase if they haven't.
No purchase. They're just showing up like, hey, I'm just here to take a class. Like they haven't purchased anything. Well, then your whole sales conversation is very easy. But most people, 95% plus, show up to the studio having already made a purchase and registered for class. So most sales processes at the front desk now are an upsell or a cross sell, not a sale in general. So just funnel towards that conversation would be the point. Teacher pay.
Oh,
There's another ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Let's play this different. Just coaching aside, you're opening a studio today in whatever vision you would have as a coach. How are you structuring, like what type of structure are you putting together for how you pay your teachers? What would you roll with?
I really liked what you shared, Josh. And that is something that I was moving towards at the end of having my studio, is having a small team and everyone on salary. And I did have a couple people on salary, actually, my manager and an assistant. And they had 401k. I mean, it was pretty awesome. But that is what I would do. A small team, and they do multiple jobs, right? They have multiple responsibilities. It's not just showing up to teach a class, but that they're leaders in the business. You know, maybe somebody who's awesome at mentoring and auditing classes. That's their, you know, that's their additional SOP. Maybe somebody else is managing the front desk. Maybe somebody else is managing the cleaners, something like that. But just basically like enrolling them in leadership and then paying them for that.
Carol, what would you do?
Salary. Yeah.
I don't know. I think I love that in theory. I think it could be really challenging to find really strong teachers who also have the leadership skills or the, you know, I mean, I don't know. I do love that as an option. I think, right, if I were to redo it, I would have, I would do a base. I think we talked about this, like there's a base level, but if you have more participants, you know, based on capacity, like you could get paid more if you, I think Terry, you brought that one up, right? If you're at like 80% capacity, you would maybe get a higher pay. And if you know, I can't remember which levels you said, Terry, but I really like that.
Yeah, it's like I was actually, it's hard to believe it was 3 years ago now. I was a spin instructor for a hot minute. And that's how we were paid. And we weren't even paid a base, which I would do. What I said is if I did it again, although the whole salary thing, I like that idea as well. But it, again, just is like pay a base rate, let's say for an hour class, they got to be there 30 minutes before, 30 minutes. So it's 2 hours. So let's say I pay them $20 an hour. So that's the base rate for their class. Again, I'm just sort of throwing this out here. Like, so they make a minimum of $40 for the class for those 2 hours. Then if they're at 50% or more attendance, 50 to, let's say 50 to either 75, I think it was like, for me, it was like 80%. Then you got, let's say $50. You got to pay an additional $10 or something like that. And you obviously you have to look at your numbers and see what works for you. And then if you were at 80+% attendance, you would get on top of that. And so, and that's how I was paid. So it was a tiered thing. It would depend on the class. So every class, and was they use MindBody. You could set this up in MindBody this way. Is it's like, and it just says, okay, here's your payroll report. So this class you made 55, this class you made 65, and it was all based on attendance. And I was like promoting my classes like heck. I mean, I only taught one night a week, but I taught 2 classes, and this is the other thing about just getting how to get teachers to promote their own classes, is I also went there and took class. And when I was there, it's like, oh my gosh, Carol, it's so good. I haven't seen you. Come Tuesdays with Terry. I'd love to see you my Tuesday with Terry. And I would, oh, hi, I'm Terry. Hi, Nina. Nice to meet you. I'm an instructor here. I teach on Tuesdays. Would love to see you in my class. Or, oh my gosh, Maria, I know you only practice on the weekends. I'm actually subbing for Jason on Saturday at 9:30. I'd love to see you take my session. Come on in. That's how I built my classes, was being at the studio, talking to people, not just the people I knew, but the people I didn't know, and personally inviting them and introducing myself, and actually inviting them. Can you think, we always say teacher training, the sales training, when aren't you the yoga teacher? Could you imagine if one of I know for me, if one of my yoga teachers had come to me and said, Terry, I'd love to see you in my class. Do you think I would probably move heaven and earth to make sure I took that class? Right? Or the other way also, if you want to build all the studios, if you're a real good team player, which we hope everybody is, it's like, oh my gosh, Carol, I am taking Josh's class on Saturday. Let's have a yoga date. Wow, let's practice together on Saturday.
Yeah.
As a teacher, inviting it. You don't think I'd
hype up the other people too.
Hype up the other people as well. And that's how you can actually start building like those classes that everybody claims. I'm sorry, I got really fired up about this yesterday on a call. It's like, why do we give teachers the out? And we do it. We, meaning us as as studio directors. Why do we give teachers the out? Oh, they're teaching an off-peak class, or not a desirable time.
Oh yeah, it's a 6 a.m. class. It's
6 a.m.
understandable that
class,
it's not
or
busy.
this class, Saturday. It's like, is there any other business out there that gives their staff a pass just because of the time? I don't think so.
Yeah, no way.
No way.
Yeah, especially because there's so many studios that have 5:30 in the morning, 6 a.m. classes that are full. They're totally full.
Yeah.
You just Maria just taught one. How many people were in class?
17.
Right. Of like a 24-person room or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's better than 50%. So it's bullshit that you can't fill your class. That's just lazy. That's lazy.
All right. I'm jumping on this rant too. I see Carol being like, oh, here we go. It's bullshit. And if it's not, if you have let's use a 6 a.m. class as the example. If you have a 6 a.m. class, this is a mentor of mine in the first studio I managed like forever ago. She said, if you have a 6 a.m. class 5 days a week and you hate teaching it, and it's hard to get people to go there, and it's not performing, and you're not able to build it up, why do you have a 6 a.m. class? Just cancel it off the schedule. What are we doing? Asterisk. He said the only reason to have a 6 a.m. class, other than that, and this is at that moment, is to sell annual passes. It's for the person who's like, I just don't know if I'm going to be able to make it in enough to warrant the price. They're like, but there's always 6 a.m. because like anyone could probably come at 6 a.m. So it helped the bigger sale, but that's not really what we're selling to generally. And I don't think that matters as much. But yeah, if the class, why let them off the hook? The performance-based pay, so tiers based off of what happens. I like the idea of the base. I do feel like the industry on the whole, and especially as in the yoga industry, but all of the wellness, boutique fitness industry, the idea of being paid sort of from a pure commission thing, it's still very prevalent in gyms and stuff.
Yeah.
Seems a little bullshitty, because it suggests that it's entirely the responsibility of the teacher to get people in their class, and it's not. It is their responsibility to have people come back again and to participate, and sure, they should help promote or whatever. But it's not entirely responsible. It's the whole studio. So having a base, it's like you're a trained professional who's going to show up and whatever, I think is a necessity there.
Can I weigh in on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I was just gonna say, like, I think more often than not, yoga teachers, myself included, have other jobs. So like when I stopped working there was a time where I was working at 3 different studios. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to start working at one studio and focus on my full-time job. I told my studio owner, hey, like, this is the only studio I'm going to teach at. And he offered me full-time, which would mean that I had a salary and that I had benefits. But it also came with the fact that I would only have 2 weeks vacation. And, I'm like, okay, well, that just doesn't jive with my full-time job. And I couldn't make it work. Even though this is the only studio that I teach at, I declined his offer for benefits and for full-time for a salary because it just didn't align with what I spend realistically the majority of my time doing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, how often does it align? And I don't think that it does very often. And finding that that yoga teacher whose full-time job is teaching yoga is rare because the cost of living is so high. And let's face it, being a yoga teacher just doesn't pay much.
You think?
It pays a lot more now. But okay, this is a really important point, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And I think Carol was alluding to this earlier too, that like finding that rock star teacher who also has these other leadership skills or can do these other things, that's the difficulty. The challenge that I would propose in the conversation is that requires the mentality of looking at what's currently happening rather than building your business. So to me, the idea of like an inner nucleus of power players who are on salary, there are other things that are insinuated there, such as like that salary can't be some bullshit. Like you've got to pay the person well so that it's competitive versus another full-time job.
Absolutely.
If I can get paid more doing a full-time job working at Starbucks, then like, yeah, you're right. So hence the full-time teacher thing. Yeah. Then why would I do that? So you have to actually pay more competitively, but therefore the return on that investment needs to be that what you're creating is someone who is an awesome teacher and is a leader and can produce sales results and is really taking stuff off your plate. Hence, training and honing and building that person up. It's like a totally different mentality. And if we're starting a studio today and you go that direction, it's quite counterculture to the industry in this way, in that you'd be looking at it like, okay, I'm going to hire someone. I'm going to hire Carol because what I see in Carol is she's already a good teacher, but I think she can be a great teacher. She already has some skills. She's a go-getter. Like she has all the other attitudes, but I know that Carol in 3 years from now working with me is going to be a fucking rock star. So I want to bring her into the fold now and develop her towards that moment sort of thing. Like that's the mentality that you would have to have with it, which has some pros and cons, because then when you lose someone, it's a little more painful. On the other hand, it creates that dynamic of where like they really are part of the inner nucleus. So when you have a hiccup or a problem, or they have a problem, it really requires that you actually fucking deal with it. You actually talk about it. You actually sort it out. You actually provide the training for them. You actually look at the whole thing critically and help them succeed, and vice versa. So,
And that creates loyalty.
Yeah. And gosh, you have a perfect example of this yourself.
Myself?
Not yourself.
Yeah.
That you have a perfect person that you're on your team that you did just this with.
I don't know what we're talking about.
Mara.
Oh, man.
Duh. I mean,
Yeah.
Mara is our wizard of Oz.
Absolutely.
Was not a yoga teacher.
Absolutely.
But what you just described is Mara, because Mara is our Wizard of Ops. A lot of you know her, and she is the backbone of the YC. And she started working at Josh's studio when she was like 18 or 19 years old. I think she said it was her first or second major job.
Actual
and
job.
then you developed her as she never became a yoga teacher, but she became an integral part of your studio. You recognized her leadership potential. You nurtured that. And she has her own business as well. And she has come with you into the YC and has helped build the YC. So that is that part of that is when you're developing leaders is then I've always been a fan, and I've been posting some of his stuff in the thing, but Simon Sinek, who I've just really I've always admired, and I've been, reading and following him lately. And he just talks about that, with the leadership. And we use this phrase all the time, all boats rise with the tide, right? It's true when you're fostering and developing, and how can I help you? The biggest thing he says as a leader that you can do is say to your team, how can I help you be successful? What can I do to support you? Right. And so that's exactly what you're describing in this. And it does take time.
Yeah.
And I think that's
it's a development path. To interject, I think you're going to the same place, Sarah. Like, I think that's part of the hiccup, not with the model that we're describing, the alternative model of performance and being paid. Because I think that works too. That would be the number 2 that I would go to for sure. I think that the current way that that's iterated, though, puts too much of a tension dynamic between a teacher especially, but someone working in a yoga studio and the owner around things like pay and expectations. And it seems to be, no shade intended on anyone, but like it seems to be a bit of a cop-out in the industry too, where it's like, well, I just expect this class to be busy and you get paid if it's busier. And like, there's not a lot of effort to developing and asking, how do I support you? And how do I make you hone your craft and make this a better work environment for you? So then what happens is how do you make it a better work environment, and how does someone get better? Well, they have to do it totally on their own accord. And that's what creates this, like, it's my class mentality.
Yeah.
Because it is my class. I fucking planned the whole thing. I got the music together. I showed up. I talked to the students. I told them to come back. I put it on my Facebook page. I promoted it, everything else. You're just the facilities. It is my class. Now, it's not. It's the studio's students and therefore their class. But it's like really grabbing those reins, not out of who has control or power. That's not really what it's about. It's more like what builds the most robust system. Your whole team is more like, no, we are all collectively sharing this vision and moving this direction. That will always be stronger. Full stop.
And we have similar core values. Oh,
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we have our core value workshop a week from tomorrow, next Friday.
Holy shit, you guys, do this core value workshop.
It is amazing. Yeah, she's awesome.
It's gonna be off the hook. This is not as simple as to be like, oh, let's write some core values down. This is like, she's actually talking about how do you act? Because here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud until they've heard it. You're like, yeah, that's true. No one knows what their core values are. Like, not no one, but most owners, they're like, yeah, I want us to abide by our core values. And like, cool, what are they? You can't list them. Like,
and if you list them, it's like, well, what does that mean? And how are you acting about, and how, okay, you see a lot, diversity, inclusivity. Okay, those are beautiful. What does that mean? What does it mean? And how does that affect your business? How do you translate that into action? What do you do with that?
Oh, I was just, somebody listed one of their core values was teach from love. And I'm like,
yeah,
great. But how?
What does that mean?
Look like?
I know.
How do you know? How do you know if I'm teaching from love or not? If I think that it's time to give you some tough love in the class, does that count?
Your fucking knee.
Or do I have to be nice? Does that mean?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about the woman who's leading the webinar?
Yeah, Sherry Colsimo is someone who works with a few studios actually who have been in the YC. She's not a studio owner herself, but longtime teacher. She's a public speaker. She gets brought in by, even most recently, when I was talking with her, she was brought in at an Apple retreat here in Mexico and was doing a 3-day workshop on sort of the why factor for the employees at the management level, etc. And then full-time yoga teacher, but then also she runs yoga retreats with a couple of other partners. And I think in their busiest year, they said they did like 24 retreats or something stupid like that at one point.
Wow.
Like,
That's like 2 a month.
right. Like she's like, run a lot of retreats. So she understands sort of the business side of it too. And then the core value thing, I'll let her tell the story of how she sort of has developed, what she works on and what she does there. But the bottom line to sum up all of this is like figuring out not loosely what your core values are as it pertains to your business, because that's also a different thing. Your personal core values and your business core values are not the same thing. They can be different, and that's okay. So how do you get it clear and defined and written down? How do you then get your team on board with it? And then the most important part, how are you practically applying that,
In your business.
into your business? How do you actually like live your core values? Part of the reason this workshop is happening and that we're timing it where it is that this is the precursor to the summit. So whether you're coming to the summit or not, if you're coming to the summit, you have to take this workshop, go do it. But whether you're coming to the summit or not, just so you've heard it, it's like this is the starting point for decision making in general. And I mean, we do this in the YC. A lot of owners, Carol can probably attest to this, having owned a studio for 2 decades of time, like at some point you do sort of sort out in your head what your belief system is around how to make decisions and what's sort of quote right or wrong in your business. Or if you don't, everything is very difficult. You just have a lot of internal conflict.
Yeah, so it's all in the YC, but it's next Friday, the 11th of October from, let me make sure I got it right here. We do everything in Central Time, so it's 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Central Time, so translate that into your own time zone. If you do sign up for it and you're for whatever reason not able to make it, maybe like that doesn't work for you in terms of time zone, you get the recording. So, and you'll get all the assets that happen. So you can still participate even if maybe you can't do it in real time. You will get access to that recording. And the only way to get access to that recording is to sign up for the workshop. It's $199. It's a real deal. Oftentimes, Sherry charges a lot more for things like this, or speakers like of Sherry's caliber, if you've gone to retreats and stuff like that. So, and as Josh said, if you are a summit attendee, it is included. So those of you may be thinking, well, maybe if you're still on the fence about the summit, this is included. So you get a little extra bonus, a little something, something if you sign up for the summit, which starts basically a month from today.
1 month.
One
1
month.
month from today.
And there's still space, there's still time to go. And we'd love to see you there.
Only on-site spots left. Off-sites are sold out. We have 2 VIP spots, I think, left. Those are the best ones to grab, I would say right now. The VIP spots, in case you haven't heard it, it's the summit, and you stay on site, and we handle your transportation, and we handle your food, and you get a special workshop, and you get to have dinner with myself and or the team every night to just ask any questions that you have. And on the last day, you get an extra day. So we get the GSD, the Get Shit Done Day, where it's like, cool, and we just plan stuff out. Now let's do it for a day, and you get the full force of the team behind you to help really get that momentum going. So yeah, it's exciting.
And you get me on the dance floor.
And you get to hear the dance floor.
And that's priceless. Let me just tell you. Seven.
I can't top it. I have a bunch of fresh yoga mats sitting in my office taking up space that I ordered for this. So that's exciting, but not as exciting as Terry on the dance floor.
Just ask all my classmates at my 45th high school reunion 2 weeks ago. They were so impressed that not only, but actually, I think I talked about this last week. They were, somewhat impressed that I could still get down on the dance floor. What really impressed them was I could get back up.
You get oh my God. I love it.
It was like,
right.
I can get down. I just can't get back up anymore. That was.
I think that's it for today. We're out of time.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much.
Everyone.
Sign up for Core Values. If you're interested in the summit, You still have any questions, DM us. Maria, who was on the call earlier, be happy to reach out with you, talk to you about any questions, anything, help you get signed up. And as always, you know, don't have a coach and you're curious about pricing, you're curious about what can I do with my teachers, you can always book a one-off coaching call with any one of us, a 2-hour, 4-hour intensive. If you're interested in finding out about our program, book a call with Maria. She'd be happy to explain what we can do for you and your studio. So there we have it.
That's it.
That's it. See you
Bye.
next.